Today I will be revisiting my Scribble Spritz Watercolor Technique and then creating a grungy watercolor background with multicolored splatters. Hello and welcome to Creative Coloring with Erum. A super duper easy watercolor card today, you guys. Maybe not everyone's cup of tea as it's grungy and messy, but you can always tone down your watercolor pieces by choosing different colors or even leaving out the excessive splattering. I will be using the Blossom and Bloom stamp set today, a gorgeous 4x6 outline stamp and also the coordinating die for it. I will prep the watercolor cardstock with anti-static powder. This is from the loose A2 watercolor sheets. I will stamp the image in embossing ink and pour over antique gold embossing powder over it. Now comes the awesome and easy part, the scribbling. I will be using the watercolor brush markers in Midnight Violet and Rubelite for the flowers and the jet black one for the leaves. If you have watched my previous videos where I have covered this technique, you know what I will do and say. Don't worry about going out of the lines, it is good if you do. This covers the white outline we get after die cutting with any color that runs out. And it does look good in the end. The reason I use watercolor brush markers for this technique is because they're very pigmented and they react beautifully with water. I will start by adding scribbling to the leaves with the jet black marker. And you can see right away that I won't be covering the entire leaf. I will be leaving out some of the areas. This is so that we have a variation in the concentration of the pigment. This results in some of the portions of the leaves having a darker pigment and some light. For the flowers, I will add a mix of Rubelite and Midnight Violet. First, I'll add Rubelite and then I will add Midnight Violet. You can also just use one color or more of one and less of the other. Your choice. Once I have covered all the areas, I will spritz water onto the panel to activate the pigment. Now I usually leave this to air dry. You will get the best results if you let it air dry. But if you are in a hurry, you may use your heat tool. But the result is going to be a tad different. It's not going to be like if you would leave it to air dry. And I also wanted to show you the difference between the leaves and the flowers. If you notice, I did leave a bit of space in the leaves, but I didn't do that for the petals because the petals are tinier. I have a smaller space there. I should have added a little less pigment, but I wanted to show you how to get full coverage as well. Now this image has dried and you can see we have some white uncolored areas on the leaves, but no texture on the flowers. They appear very solid. And they look fine, but if you want to have some portions to be light, you can either add splatters of clean water over the image and then sop them up with a tissue, or add a large blob of water in areas you want lighter, like specific petals or the leaves. You will need to let the water sit for a few seconds before using your tissue paper over it. As you can see here, I am applying water to this area and I will let it just sit for a few seconds and then pick it up with my tissue paper. And you can see that the area has lightened considerably. Now I will work on the background, and for this I will use the A2 watercolor cardstock. You can see that the image looks great even on plain white cardstock, so if you are more into clean and simple cards, you can stop here. But I wanted to get messy and inky, so first I will apply water to the panel and add a light color wash using the jet black pigment. And once I end up with a light gray shade that I really like, I will drop in splatters of Rubelite, Midnight Violet and jet black pigment. Please note that these splatters, these pigments are going to be very diluted as to not appear super bold and prominent, but just add a bit of character to the background. I'm doing this while the panel is still wet so that once I'm happy with the look, I will move on to the next step. Again, you can stop over here and use this background that is not massively overworked. I mean, it is messy, but really not as grungy as the final result is going to be. Now I will apply a darker jet black pigment By the way, this panel is still wet, so it's easier for me to move the color around, and I won't get away prominent drips at this point, as I usually do when I watercolor. They will bloom because of the wet cardstock, so be careful if you are adding the drips, and if you want them to be super prominent, so make sure you dry the panel first, the first layer of color that you've already added on there. Dry that and then add the drips. I would suggest not drying the panel so that the drips become part of the background. Once the darker pigment is on there, I will go back in to add some diluted ruby light splatters on the wet cardstock, because most of my previous ones look a little bit more muted now. And then I will use my heat tool to dry the panel. Once done, I will add some diluted black splatters and then some more diluted black splatters. If you don't like splatters, you can stop at this point, but I did this step a couple of times. I will dry the panel completely and then add more black splatters, and this time these are going to be super prominent because I'm using the Essential 12 pan set. Once dried, I will adhere the image with foam tape and just pop a heat embossed sentiment. My card is done. You can color multiple images in this way and set them aside to use on your projects or plain card bases if you're in a hurry to send a card to a friend. The drying time is the only thing that takes time in this, but other than that, the coloring aspect is super fast and also really fun. A lot of people worry about color mixing and creating mud using Scribble Spritz technique. I have never really given much thought to it because I never overwork the image. I do not heat set it, I let it air dry, so that also helps in not mixing the colors forcefully, which you might get if you use a heat tool, as the pressure of the air from the heat tool will mix the colors. I always say you can include your children when you are doing this kind of watercoloring. So I hope you liked my card. Thank you everyone for watching. Bye.
Hello there! Did that video just spark your creativity? And do you want more project ideas and inspiration videos too? Well, if you do, please make sure that you subscribe to the Alternate YouTube channel. Also, make sure that you do click that notification bell so you don't miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye!